Blood trickles onto white marble as she presses a trembling hand to her temple. Outside the penthouse windows, Manhattan glitters with indifferent beauty. 60 stories below her feet. 7 months of new life grow within her, a secret worth killing for. You know what happens to people who cross me? His voice echoes from the phone speaker. The voice that once whispered love, now dripping with quiet menace. The perfect husband, the perfect marriage, the perfect lie. 24 hours ago, she discovered the truth behind his empire built on stolen dreams and buried bodies. 24 hours ago, she realized the father of her child was a monster wearing a tailored suit. 24 hours ago, she found an unlikely ally in the woman who shared his bed. Now, with her baby kicking beneath her ribs, she makes a vow in whispered determination. I won't let you take my child. Some betrayals can never be forgiven. Some men should never be trusted. And some women, when cornered, become more dangerous than anyone could imagine. Sophie Richards woke up on the cold marble floor of the master bathroom, her head throbbing. Blood trickled down her temple, staining the white collar of her silk blouse. The penthouse was eerily quiet except for a voice coming from her phone on speaker. Did you really think you could betray me? Elon's voice was calm, too calm. You know what happens to people who cross me. Sophie. She pulled herself up, her 7-month pregnant belly making the simple movement a struggle. Her reflection in the mirror revealed a gash above her right eyebrow, her usually perfect blonde hair matted with blood. I won't let you take my baby, she whispered, one hand protectively cradling her stomach. Elon's laughter echoed through the speaker. You have until tomorrow to sign the papers. Otherwise, the line went dead. Sophie slid down against the wall, her body trembling. How had it come to this 24 hours ago? Everything had seemed so different. 24 hours earlier, the Metropolitan Museum of Art glittered with New York's elite, Sophie Richards, dressed in a custom-made Valentino gown that elegantly draped over her pregnant belly, smiled politely as another socialite complimented her glow. At 38, the former high-powered attorney had transitioned into her role as the wife of tech billionaire Elon Richards with practiced grace. Mrs. Richards, you're absolutely radiant tonight. The photographer from Vanity Fair snapped another picture. How's the Richards AI Foundation's fundraiser going? We've already raised over $10 million for children's education in developing countries. Sophie replied with the rehearsed answer. The smile never reached her eyes. Across the room, her husband of 5 years, Elon Richards, was deep in conversation with Victoria Stone, CEO of Stone Technologies and Richards AI's biggest competitor. At 54, Elon commanded attention, tall, silver-haired, with the confidence that came from having $50 billion in the bank and controlling the most advanced AI company in the world. Victoria laughed at something Elon said, touching his arm with familiarity that made Sophie's stomach tighten. At 34, Victoria was everything Sophie used to be: sharp, ambitious, and ruthless in the boardroom. They seem awfully friendly for sworn enemies, a voice said beside her. Sophie turned to find Jack Bennett, her oldest friend from law school and the one person from her previous life she still trusted completely. At 45, Jack had the kind of rugged handsomeness that aged like fine wine, his blue eyes always carrying a hint of mischief. Hostile takeovers make strange bedfellows, Sophie replied, taking a sip of her sparkling water. Jack's expression turned serious. Sophie, there's something you should know. Charles Wilson has been meeting with Elon almost daily for the past month. Private meetings, off the books. Charles Wilson, Elon's personal attorney for over 20 years, was the man who made problems disappear. If he was involved in secret meetings, something significant was happening. Maybe it's just the new Tokyo expansion, Sophie said, but doubt crept into her voice. Jack shook his head. My source says they're reviewing personal asset transfers, not company business. Before Sophie could respond, the crowd parted, and a collective murmur spread through the room. Megan Fox had arrived, stunning in a fitted emerald dress that accentuated her hourglass figure. At 36, the model and fashion designer had recently become the face of several luxury brands. Sophie watched as Elon's attention immediately shifted from Victoria to Meghan. There was something in his eyes, not just desire, but recognition, something practiced. "Excuse me," Sophie said to Jack, suddenly feeling lightheaded. "I need some air." Instead of heading to the balcony, Sophie made her way to the private elevator that would take her to Elon's office in the building next door. Her husband never went anywhere without access to his systems, and the Metropolitan Tower had been wired specifically for events like these. The office was dark when she entered, using the key card she rarely needed. Sophie hesitated before sitting at Elon's desk. 5 years of marriage, and she'd never once invaded his privacy this way, but the baby kicked inside her, a reminder of what was at stake. The computer unlocked with her fingerprint, a privilege Elon had granted during what he called his commitment to transparency early in their marriage. Sophie had never used it before. She navigated through folders labeled with project names she recognized from dinner conversations. Nothing seemed unusual until she noticed a folder simply titled SRR, her initials. Inside were documents dated 3 months earlier, right when she'd announced her pregnancy. Legal papers outlining the transfer of her Richards AI shares to an offshore trust. Prenuptial amendments that would limit her claims in case of divorce. Most disturbing, a custody strategy that described her as emotionally unstable and unfit for motherhood. Sophie's hands trembled as she found an email from Charles to Elon. "Everything is in place. Once the child is born, we can proceed with phase 2. She'll have no legal recourse." A notification popped up on the screen, a text message from an unknown number. "She's with me tonight. Everything proceeding as planned." Sophie quickly took photos of the documents with her phone, her legal training kicking in. Evidence. She needed evidence. As she was about to leave, a final document caught her eye, a medical report on her, dated last week, that she'd never authorized. It detailed her increasing emotional instability and dependency on anxiety medication, neither of which was true. The office door suddenly opened. Sophie quickly closed the files and stood up. Charles Wilson stood in the doorway, his silver hair perfectly styled, his Armani suit immaculate as always. At 60, he had the sharp eyes of a predator. "Sophie, what a surprise to find you here," he said smoothly. "Elon mentioned you were feeling unwell. I came to collect some documents for him. I was just leaving." Sophie moved toward the door, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. Charles blocked her path slightly. "You know, pregnancy can be such a vulnerable time. Emotionally, I mean, Elon worries about you." There was something in his tone that sent a chill down Sophie's spine. "I'm fine. Charles, just tired." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Of course. Let me escort you back to the gala." As they walked, Sophie felt the weight of his gaze on her back. She needed to talk to Jack immediately. Back at the gala, Jack was nowhere to be found. Sophie scanned the room anxiously, finally spotting him near the bar, deep in conversation with Megan Fox. Their heads were bent close together, and Jack looked disturbed by whatever she was saying. Sophie approached them, and both fell silent immediately. "Sophie," Jack straightened. "I was just about to look for you." Megan Fox turned, and for a moment, Sophie felt a strange sense of déjà vu. There was something familiar about her eyes, the shape of her face. "Mrs. Richards," Megan extended her hand. "I've heard so much about you." "All good things, I hope," Sophie replied automatically. "Quite the opposite, actually," Megan said with a small smile that held no humor. "But I never believe rumors." Before Sophie could respond, Elon appeared at her side, his hand possessively on her lower back. "Darling, I see you've met Megan. She'll be the new face of Richards AI's consumer division." His voice was warm, but his fingers dug into her waist. "Jack, I didn't expect to see you here. Business or pleasure?" "Both, as always," Jack replied easily, though Sophie could see the tension in his jaw. "Sophie and I were just catching up on old times." How nostalgic, Elon said. Sophie, the mayor wants to discuss the foundation's next project. Shall we? It wasn't a question. As Elon guided her away, Sophie glanced back to see Jack hand Megan a business card, their exchange hidden from most of the room. You disappeared for quite a while, Elon remarked as they crossed the room. Feeling all right. Just needed some quiet, Sophie replied. The baby was kicking. Elon's hand moved to her stomach, a gesture that once filled her with joy but now felt like a threat. Our little heir. Have you reconsidered the birthing plan? I suggested. The Swiss clinic has excellent security. I'd prefer to stay in New York, near my doctor, Sophie said carefully. Elon's smile tightened. We'll discuss it on the yacht this weekend. I've arranged a little getaway for us, just the two of us. To reconnect before the baby comes? Sophie felt her blood run cold. The yacht, the Azam, once her favorite place in the world, now it sounded like a prison. This weekend I have the hospital charity board meeting. Canceled. Elon cut in smoothly. I took the liberty. You've been pushing yourself too hard. His grip tightened again. I insist. Sophie. Doctor's orders. Across the room, Sophie caught Jack's concerned gaze. She gave him a slight shake of her head, a signal from their lawyer days. Something's wrong. Be ready. The next morning, Sophie waited until Elon left for his 8 a.m. board meeting before calling Jack. They agreed to meet at their old cafe near Columbia, a place Elon would never visit. You're sure about what you saw? Jack asked after Sophie showed him the photo she'd taken. He's planning to take everything. Jack, my shares, my baby, my reputation. Sophie's voice cracked. What I don't understand is why now, after 5 years. Jack took a deep breath. There's something you need to know about Elon. Something I should have told you years ago. What are you talking about? Before you, there was another wife, Catherine. She wasn't public knowledge. Charles made sure of that. Sophie stared at him. Another wife? That's impossible. I would have known. Catherine Stone, Victoria's older sister. Victoria, his competitor. Jack nodded. Catherine was pregnant too. 8 months along when she supposedly fell down the stairs at their lake house. She lost the baby. Filed for divorce a month later, claiming Elon had tampered with her medication. Sophie felt the room spin. What happened to her? Official report says suicide, overdose. But before she died, she contacted me, said she had proof Elon had been planning to get rid of her from the beginning, that their meeting wasn't chance. He'd targeted her because of her family connections in the tech industry. Like me, Sophie whispered. Her father had been one of Silicon Valley's pioneering engineers, with patents Elon had always admired. You think he married me for my father's intellectual property rights? I think it's bigger than that. Look at the timing. He proposed right after your father changed his will, making you the sole beneficiary of his estate, including those patents. Sophie's mind raced. And now that I'm pregnant, history is repeating itself. There's more, Jack said grimly. I've been looking into Charles Wilson's cases. Every woman who's ever challenged Elon ends up discredited, broke, or worse. His first girlfriend from Stanford had a promising tech startup until she was suddenly arrested for fraud. Charges were eventually dropped, but her reputation was ruined. Why are you telling me this now? Sophie demanded. Because I didn't have proof before. And because yesterday I got this. Jack slid a USB drive across the table. Anonymous delivery. It's got financials showing Elon has been moving major assets offshore for months. The pattern started exactly when you told him you were pregnant. Sophie's hand went to her stomach protectively. He's going to try to hurt my baby. I won't let that happen, Jack promised. But Sophie, you need to be careful. Very careful. Especially this weekend on the yacht. I can't go now. You have to. If he suspects you know anything, it could accelerate his timeline. Act normal. I'll have a boat standing by near Monaco. And, Jack hesitated. I think we might have an unexpected ally. Who? Megan Fox. Sophie looked at him in disbelief. Elon's new, whatever she is. Are you serious? She approached me last night, said she had information about Elon's plans for you and wanted to help. It could be a trap. Maybe. But she knew details about Catherine's case that were never made public. Sophie's phone buzzed with a text from Elon. Car will pick you up at 2 p.m. for the airport. Pack light. I have to go, Sophie said, her mind racing. Jack, if anything happens to me, nothing will happen, Jack said firmly, taking her hand. But just in case, I've prepared papers transferring your voting rights to me temporarily. Medical proxy, too. Sophie signed the documents, her attorney's mind noting the irony of trusting legal papers when they had failed to protect her so far. As they parted, Jack hugged her tightly. Stay in touch however you can. If I don't hear from you every 12 hours, I'm coming to get you myself. Sophie watched him walk away, unaware it would be the last time she would see him whole. The Azam gleamed in the Mediterranean sun, 590 feet of floating luxury anchored off Monaco. Once, Sophie had loved this yacht, with its multiple pools, helipad, and submarine dock. Now, as the helicopter landed on the upper deck, it felt like a gilded cage. Elon greeted her with champagne sparkling water for her and the charming smile that had first won her heart at a charity gala 5 years ago. To us, he toasted, and to new beginnings. There was something in his eyes that made Sophie's skin crawl. She pretended to sip her water. You seem tense, darling, Elon observed, guiding her to the main salon where lunch was laid out. Work stress. Just pregnancy discomfort, Sophie lied. The helicopter ride was bumpy. You should rest after lunch. I've had the chef prepare all your favorites. The meal progressed with Elon discussing business plans, future expansions. Acting as though nothing was amiss, Sophie played along, picking at her food while discreetly checking that her phone still had signal. One bar, barely enough. I've been thinking, Elon said casually. Perhaps we should revise our wills before the baby comes. Standard procedure? Of course, Sophie replied. Should I call my attorney? A flash of annoyance crossed Elon's face. No need. Charles has drawn up everything. Just standard updates. Really. I'd still like my own counsel to review them. Professional habit. Elon's smile tightened. Always the lawyer? That's what I admired about you from the beginning. Your thoroughness. After lunch, Sophie excused herself to rest in their stateroom. Once alone, she quickly texted Jack. On yacht. Planning something with legal papers. Signal weak. She searched the room for cameras. Elon was paranoid about security finding 2 hidden in air vents. She'd have to be careful. Sophie pretended to nap while considering her options. The yacht was fully staffed, but everyone worked for Elon. The nearest land was at least 30 minutes by speedboat. She was trapped. Her phone buzzed with Jack's reply. Documents likely change inheritance. Don't sign. We'll be in Monaco tomorrow. M says watch your drinks. M. Megan Fox, the mysterious ally. Sophie deleted the message just as there was a knock at the door. A steward entered with a tea tray. Mr. Richards thought you might want some of your special pregnancy tea, ma'am. The special tea was an herbal blend Sophie's doctor had recommended for nausea, but something felt off. Thank you. Please leave it by the bed. After the steward left, Sophie examined the tea. It looked normal, smelled normal. She poured it into a potted plant anyway. Hours later, at dinner, Elon was unusually attentive, continuously refilling her water glass himself. Sophie pretended to drink while emptying it into a napkin when he wasn't looking. You seem distracted, Elon commented as dessert was served. Is the baby giving you trouble? Just a little restless tonight. Elon reached across the table to take her hand. His touch, once comforting, now made her want to recoil. I was thinking, he said casually, perhaps we should name him after your father, a tribute to his legacy. The mention of her father sent a chill through Sophie. We don't know it's a boy yet. Call it a father's intuition. Elon smiled. Speaking of paperwork, Charles sent over those documents. Nothing urgent, but perhaps we could review them after dinner. Actually, I'm feeling quite dizzy suddenly, Sophie said, not entirely lying. The fear and stress were making her lightheaded. Would you mind if I signed them tomorrow instead? Concern washed over Elon's face so convincingly that for a moment, Sophie questioned her suspicions. Of course, darling. Let me help you to bed. In their stateroom, Elon was the picture of the devoted husband, helping her change, bringing her more water, checking her temperature. You do feel warm, he said, his hand lingering on her forehead. Perhaps we should call the doctor. No, just need sleep, Sophie murmured, pretending to be drowsier than she felt. I'll be in the study if you need me. Try to rest. He kissed her forehead before leaving. The moment he was gone, Sophie checked her phone. No signal now. They must have moved further out to sea. She quietly moved to the door. Listening. Footsteps receded down the hallway. Then voices. Elon and someone else. Taking a risk. Sophie cracked the door open. Through the narrow gap, she could see Elon speaking with the ship's doctor at the end of the hallway. Should take effect within the hour, the doctor was saying. The cramping will begin gradually, appear natural. By morning, and there's no danger to her, Elon asked. Some blood loss is expected, but we're equipped to handle it. She'll believe it's a natural miscarriage, especially with her history. What history? Sophie whispered to herself. She had no history of miscarriages. And the documents? And the doctor asked. She'll sign when she's vulnerable, Elon replied confidently. Charles will arrive tomorrow to oversee everything. Sophie closed the door silently, heart pounding. They had drugged her water at dinner, were trying to induce a miscarriage. In a few hours, she would lose her baby. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but the lawyer in Sophie took control. She needed evidence. Grabbing her phone, she turned on the voice recorder and hid it under a decorative vase near the door, hoping to capture any further conversations. Next, she needed to find a way off the yacht. The emergency satellite phone in Elon's study might work, but he was there now. The crew all reported to him. Who could she trust? A soft knock at the door froze her in place. Mrs. Richards. A female voice, barely above a whisper. It's Megan Fox. I need to speak with you. It's urgent. Sophie hesitated, then opened the door a crack. Megan slipped inside, dressed casually in jeans and a black sweater, a stark contrast to her gala appearance. We don't have much time, Megan said, glancing nervously at the door. Elon thinks I'm in Monaco for the night, but I bribed one of the crew to bring me aboard. Why should I trust you? Sophie demanded. Because I know what he put in your drinks, and I know what happened to Catherine Stone. Megan pulled out a small bottle from her pocket. This will counteract the drug they gave you. It won't be pleasant, but it will protect your baby. Sophie stared at the bottle suspiciously. For all I know, that could kill me. If I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't be here. Megan snapped. Look, we don't have time for trust issues. Elon has the doctor preparing for a medical emergency at 2 a.m. You have about 3 hours before the cramping starts. How do you know all this? Megan's expression hardened. Because I've been working to take him down for 2 years. He doesn't know who I really am, and we need to keep it that way. Something in Megan's eyes, a familiar determination Sophie had seen before, in her own mirror made her decision. She took the bottle and swallowed its contents in one gulp. It tasted bitter. There's a speedboat coming at midnight, Megan continued. Northern side of the yacht, by the service entrance. The security cameras will have a malfunction for exactly 3 minutes. Jack sent you, Sophie realized. Jack's been trying to protect you all along. But something's happened. Megan's voice softened. He was in an accident this afternoon. Car crash outside Monaco. Sophie felt the floor tilt beneath her. Is he... critical condition? Police suspect tampering with the brakes, but can't prove anything yet. Jack, her oldest friend, who had warned her all along. Tears sprang to Sophie's eyes. "This is my fault." "No," Megan said firmly. "This is Elon's doing, and we're going to make him pay." She checked her watch. "I need to go before I'm missed. Midnight, Northern Service entrance. Bring nothing but your phone." As Megan turned to leave, Sophie grabbed her arm. "Why are you helping me? What's your connection to all this?" For a moment, something like pain flashed across Megan's face. "Let's just say we share more than a common enemy." She slipped out the door before Sophie could question her further. Left alone, Sophie felt the first waves of nausea from Megan's antidote. She barely made it to the bathroom before vomiting violently. Her body shook with chills, but her mind remained clear. The baby kicked inside her, still alive, still fighting. For the next hours, Sophie endured the antidote's effects while planning her escape. She wrote a brief note claiming seasickness and slipped it under the door so Elon wouldn't check on her. Through the bathroom window, she could see the Northern Service entrance, a small platform where supplies were loaded. At 11:55 p.m., Sophie changed into dark clothes and slipped her phone into her pocket. The corridors were quiet as she made her way through the yacht's labyrinthine interior, avoiding the night staff. The service entrance was locked, but the code Megan had given her worked. Outside, the night air was cool, the sea calm. No speedboat yet. Sophie checked her watch. 12:01 a.m. Where was the boat? A noise behind her made her spin around. Charles Wilson stood in the doorway, his expression grim. "Going somewhere. Sophie." Sophie's heart sank. She'd been betrayed. Charles stepped forward. "Elon suspected you might try something like this. Though I admit, I'm surprised you're still standing. That drug should have you bedridden by now." "You're helping him kill my baby," Sophie said, backing away. "I'm helping him protect his interests," Charles corrected. "Nothing personal, just business." "Was it just business with Catherine Stone too?" Charles's expression flickered. "You've been talking to the wrong people. Dangerous people. Did she really fall down the stairs, Charles, or did Elon push her?" "You don't want to know the answer to that question," Charles said quietly. "Now, let's go back inside before—" The roar of an engine cut him off as a sleek speedboat appeared from behind the yacht. Megan at the helm, her hair whipping in the wind. In the moment of distraction, Sophie made her choice. She shoved Charles hard, sending him stumbling backward, and jumped. The cold water shocked her system. For a terrifying moment, she thought she might sink, her pregnant body too awkward to swim. Then arms grabbed her, pulling her toward the boat. "I've got you!" Megan shouted over the engine's roar. As they sped away, Sophie looked back at the Azam. Elon stood on the deck, his figure small with distance but unmistakable. Even from afar, she could feel his rage. They had escaped the trap, but Sophie knew this was just the beginning. Elon Richards would never let her go, not while she carried his heir. The Monaco coastline approached, lights glittering like false promises. Sophie shivered, cold and afraid, but resolute. For her baby, she would fight. For her life, she would become the adversary Elon never expected. And unknown to both women, on the yacht behind them, Charles Wilson made a phone call that would change everything. "Victoria, it's Charles. There's been a complication. The Fox woman, she's not who she claims to be. Run the DNA test again. I think we found her." The safe house in New York was nothing like Sophie's penthouse at 157. The two-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn had mismatched furniture, security bars on the windows, and neighbors who minded their own business. Perfect for disappearing. 3 days had passed since their escape from the Azam. 3 days of watching news reports about Elon Richards' frantic search for his emotionally unstable pregnant wife, who had wandered off during their Mediterranean vacation. The press painted him as the worried husband, her as the mentally unwell mother-to-be. "He's playing the sympathy card," Megan said, turning off the TV. "Setting the stage for when he finds you." Sophie sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by documents Jack had prepared. Her hands trembled slightly as she reviewed the evidence they'd gathered against Elon. "Any news about Jack?" she asked, her voice tight with worry. Megan's expression softened. "Still unconscious, but stable. The doctors are optimistic." Sophie nodded, blinking back tears. The guilt weighed heavily on her. Jack had tried to warn her for years, and now he was fighting for his life because of it. "We need more," Sophie said, tapping the files. "These financial records show a pattern, but they're not enough to prove Elon tried to harm me or the baby." "What about the recording from the yacht with the doctor?" "Partial at best. They were careful with their words." Sophie rubbed her temples. "If we're going to fight him, we need something concrete." Megan paced the small living room. "There might be another way. Charles Wilson." "Charles, he works for Elon. He was going to stop me from escaping." "Yes, but Charles keeps records of everything. Insurance. He calls it." Megan sat across from Sophie. "If anyone has documentation of Elon's crimes, it's Charles. Even if that's true, how would we get to him? He's probably with Elon right now, planning their next move." Megan pulled out her phone, showing Sophie a news alert. "Not exactly. Charles is speaking at a legal conference at the Beverly Hills Hotel tomorrow. Elon's still in Europe. Searching the Mediterranean for you?" Sophie considered this. "It's risky. If Charles sees me, he'll alert Elon immediately." "He won't see you. He'll see me." Megan smiled. "As far as the world knows, I'm still Elon's newest business associate. Charles has no reason to suspect I helped you escape." "What exactly are you proposing?" "I distract Charles at the conference. You access his hotel room and copy his files, breaking and entering. That's your plan. Do you have a better one?" Megan challenged. "Every day we wait, Elon gets closer to finding you. And when he does..." Sophie didn't need her to finish the sentence. They both knew what was at stake. "Fine," Sophie agreed reluctantly. "But we do this my way. Legally ambiguous, perhaps, but not outright criminal." Megan raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "I still have contacts at my old law firm. One call, and I can get an emergency court order to preserve evidence in a potential criminal case." "Will that work?" "Not exactly as intended," Sophie admitted, "but it will give us cover if we're caught. And I know how Charles organizes his files. I can find what we need quickly." Megan studied her with newfound respect. "Remind me never to underestimate a pregnant lawyer." Sophie almost smiled. Despite their dire circumstances, she found herself trusting Megan more each day. There was something familiar about her determination, her quick thinking, something that felt like looking in a mirror. "There's something you're not telling me," Sophie said carefully. "About why you're helping me. Why you're risking your life and career to take down Elon." Megan's expression closed off. "We all have our reasons. You said we share more than a common enemy." "What did you mean?" For a moment, Megan seemed to consider answering. Then her phone buzzed. She checked it, her face paling. "What is it?" Sophie asked. "Victoria Stone. She's been trying to track me down. This says she's looking into my background, pulling DNA records." "Why would she do that?" "Because she suspects who I really am." Megan stood abruptly. "We need to move up our timeline. The conference is tomorrow afternoon. Can you be ready?" Sophie nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at her. Every instinct told her Megan was hiding something crucial. But with Jack in a coma and Elon hunting her, options were limited. "I'll make the call about the court order," Sophie said. "But Megan, when this is over, you'll know everything," Megan promised. "But right now, we need to focus on keeping you and your baby safe." As Megan left to prepare for the next day, Sophie placed a protective hand on her belly. The baby kicked strongly, as if sensing her resolve. "We'll be okay," she whispered. "Somehow, we'll be okay." The Beverly Hills Hotel hadn't changed in the 5 years since Sophie had last visited for a legal conference. The pink stucco walls, the lush gardens, the air of old Hollywood glamour, it all felt like a different lifetime. Now she sat in a rental car across the street, wearing a dark wig and sunglasses, watching as Megan Elegant in a conservative business suit entered through the main doors. The conference on ethics in corporate law was ironic, given their target. Sophie's burner phone buzzed with a text from Megan. "C arrived. Room 214. Speech in 30 minutes." They had a narrow window. Charles would prepare in his room, deliver his speech, then attend the reception. During the speech, Sophie would enter his room using the key card Megan had somehow procured. Sophie hadn't asked how, find his files, and be out before the speech ended. Sophie waited 5 more minutes, then made her way to the hotel's side entrance, used primarily by staff. Her pregnant belly, usually a hindrance, now served as perfect cover. No one questioned a pregnant woman who looked like she needed to find a bathroom urgently. The service elevator took her to the second floor. The hallway was empty as she approached room 214, her heart pounding. The keycard worked on the first try. Charles Wilson was nothing if not methodical. His hotel room was immaculate, his briefcase sitting precisely in the center of the desk. Sophie moved quickly, pulling on latex gloves before opening it. Inside were the expected legal documents, neatly organized in folders. Sophie bypassed these, looking for Charles's personal tablet. He never went anywhere without it. She found it in the bedroom, charging beside the nightstand. Sophie powered it on, holding her breath. The fingerprint lock presented a problem, but she had come prepared. From her purse, she removed a clear plastic film with a fingerprint impression taken from a water glass Charles had used during a dinner at her home months ago. The tablet unlocked. Sophie plugged in a small device Jack had prepared before his accident, a data extraction tool that would copy the tablet's contents within minutes. While the device worked, Sophie searched the room thoroughly. Charles was old school. He would have physical backup somewhere. In the bathroom, she noticed the hotel safe was in use. Sophie knew Charles's pattern. He used the same 4-digit code for everything, his father's birth year. The safe opened, revealing a small external hard drive and a manila envelope. Sophie copied the hard drive first, then opened the envelope. Inside were photos, surveillance photos of her meeting Jack at the cafe, of Megan boarding the speedboat, of Sophie herself entering this very hotel an hour ago. Cold dread washed over her. This wasn't just Charles being thorough. He knew. He'd known all along. Sophie's phone buzzed with a message from Megan. "Trap, V here. Get out now." Too late. The hotel room door opened. Sophie darted into the bathroom, closing the door silently, desperately looking for a way out. The window was too small, even if she hadn't been pregnant. Voices in the outer room. Charles and a woman, Victoria Stone. "Sure, it's her," Charles was saying. "DNA doesn't lie," Victoria replied. "She's Richard Anderson's daughter, same as Sophie." "That's impossible. Richard Anderson only had one child." "Apparently not. The birth records were sealed, but the DNA match is conclusive. Megan Fox is Sophie's half-sister." Sophie stifled a gasp. Sister. She had no siblings. Her father had died when she was in law school, her mother years before that. "Does Elon know?" Charles asked. "He suspected for months. Why do you think he brought Megan in? He's been testing her, watching how she interacts with Sophie. A sister seeking revenge for Catherine," Charles mused. "Poetic, if misguided. The question is, where is Sophie now?" Victoria's voice moved closer to the bathroom door. "You really believe she'd come here? She's desperate and running out of options. Jack Bennett is still unconscious. She needs allies." Victoria's laugh was cold. "And you offered yourself as bait. Clever." "I've protected Elon for 20 years, Charles said. "I know how these women think." Sophie's mind raced. She needed a distraction, something to get them out of the room. Her eyes fell on the shower controls. One turn, and the bathroom would flood. The hotel would send maintenance, forcing Charles and Victoria to leave. She was reaching for the faucet when Victoria spoke again. What about the baby? Elon still wants it. The child carries the Richards and Anderson bloodlines. Of course he wants it. And Sophie, Charles's voice was chillingly matter-of-fact. Once the child is born, she becomes a liability. Elon's prepared for that eventuality. Like Catherine. Victoria's tone was strange, almost pained. Catherine was unfortunate, but necessary. Your sister made her choice when she threatened to expose Elon's plans. My sister was murdered, Victoria said flatly. Don't sugarcoat it, Charles. Sophie pressed a hand to her mouth to stay silent. Victoria knew. She knew Elon had killed her sister and was still working with him. Business requires sacrifice, Charles replied. Speaking of which, we should join the conference. Your speech follows mine. And if Sophie is here, hotel security is watching every exit. She won't get far. Their voices receded, followed by the closing of the outer door. Sophie waited 30 seconds, heart hammering, before emerging from the bathroom. She quickly gathered the copied data and the photos, then sent a text to Megan. Need another way out. Hotel security at exits. The reply came seconds later. Service elevator to basement. Maintenance door leads to back alley. Car waiting. Sophie erased all signs of her presence, replaced the items in the safe, and slipped out of the room. The hallway was empty as she made her way to the service elevator. The basement was dimly lit and smelled of laundry detergent. Sophie followed the exit signs to a heavy metal door marked Emergency Exit Only. Alarm will sound. Beside it was a smaller maintenance door, unlocked as Megan had promised. The alley behind the hotel was narrow, lined with dumpsters. A black sedan idled at the far end, its driver invisible behind tinted windows. Sophie approached cautiously. The passenger window lowered slightly. Get in, Megan's voice ordered. Quickly. Relief flooded Sophie as she climbed into the car. Megan pulled away immediately, navigating through back streets to avoid the main roads. They know, Sophie said, still breathless. Charles and Victoria. They knew we were coming. I figured that out when Victoria showed up at the conference, Megan replied grimly. Did you get anything useful? Sophie held up the data devices. Everything on Charles's tablet and hard drive. And I overheard something. She hesitated. They were talking about you. About DNA tests. Megan's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. What exactly did they say? They said you're my sister, my half-sister, that we share the same father. The car swerved slightly before Megan regained control. For several long moments, she said nothing, her face a mask of concentration as she drove. Is it true? Sophie finally asked. Yes, Megan said quietly. Richard Anderson was my father too. That's impossible. My father never... Your father had a brief relationship with my mother before he met yours. When she got pregnant, he paid her to disappear. I was raised never knowing who my father was. Sophie stared at her in disbelief. The woman beside her, this stranger who had saved her life, was her sister. A sister she never knew existed. When did you find out? 2 years ago, after my mother died. She left me a letter explaining everything. By then, your father was already gone. And Elon, how does he fit into this? Megan's expression hardened. I wanted to know about my father, so I researched him. That led me to you, and to Elon. I realized he had married you right after your father's death, right when those valuable patents transferred to you. So you got close to Elon to, protect me. At first, I just wanted to meet my sister. Then I discovered what happened to Catherine Stone, how similar her situation was to yours. I realized Elon was dangerous. Megan turned down another side street. I approached him as a potential business partner, gained his trust. When I found out you were pregnant and saw how his behavior changed, I knew I had to act. Sophie tried to process this bombshell revelation. A sister, family she never knew she had. And Elon, had he known all along, the DNA tests Victoria mentioned, Sophie said slowly. Elon had them done. Megan nodded. He suspected who I was. Probably from the beginning. He's been using me to test you, to see if we would connect. Why would he care if we're sisters? Because together, we control all of Richard Anderson's patents and intellectual property. The complete AI framework your father designed. Megan glanced at Sophie. Separately, we're each valuable. Together, we're a threat. The implications were staggering. Elon hadn't just married Sophie for her father's patents. He'd been systematically working to control both Anderson daughters and their inheritance. We need to get these files somewhere safe, Sophie said, clutching the data devices. If what you're saying is true, Charles's records might show the whole conspiracy. I know a place, Megan replied. A tech expert who can crack any encryption. If there's evidence against Elon in these files, he'll find it. As they drove toward an uncertain sanctuary, Sophie studied Megan's profile. Now that she knew to look, the resemblance was clear, the same determined jaw, the same arch of eyebrows. How had she not seen it before? Why didn't you just tell me, Sophie asked, about being my sister? Would you have believed me, a stranger claiming to be your secret sister? Warning you about your husband. Megan shook her head. I needed you to trust me based on actions, not words. Sophie placed a protective hand on her belly. This changes everything. It changes nothing, Megan corrected firmly. Elon is still hunting you. The baby is still in danger, and now we know Victoria is actively helping him. After what he did to her sister, Sophie said in disbelief, people have complex motivations. Power, money, revenge. Megan's voice trailed off as she checked the rearview mirror for the third time in a minute. Are we being followed? Sophie asked, suddenly alert. I'm not sure. That black SUV has been behind us for the last few miles. Sophie turned to look. The vehicle was keeping a consistent distance, neither gaining nor falling back. Take the next right, Sophie suggested. If they follow, the decision was made for them as the SUV suddenly accelerated, ramming into their rear bumper. The sedan lurched forward. Hold on, Megan shouted, swerving to avoid another hit. The SUV pulled alongside them, and Sophie caught a glimpse of the driver, one of Elon's security team. They found us, she gasped. Megan executed a sharp turn down a narrow street, the tires screeching in protest. The SUV fell back momentarily, but quickly regained ground. There's a police station 3 blocks ahead, Megan said, accelerating through a yellow light. If we can... The SUV rammed them again, harder this time. The sedan spun, crashing into a parked car. Sophie's airbag deployed, momentarily stunning her. Through the haze of shock and pain, she was dimly aware of the SUV stopping beside them. Men in dark suits approaching. Megan's voice, shouting for her to run. Then darkness. Sophie woke to the steady beep of a heart monitor. Her body ached, her head throbbed, and an IV drip was attached to her arm. Hospital. She was in a hospital. Panic surged as her hand flew to her stomach. Still round, still pregnant. The baby is fine, Mrs. Richards. Elon's voice came from beside the bed. No thanks to your reckless behavior. Sophie turned to see her husband sitting in a chair, looking every bit the concerned spouse in his perfectly tailored suit. Only his eyes betrayed his true feelings, cold, calculating, angry. Where's Megan? Sophie demanded, her voice hoarse. Ms. Fox is receiving treatment for her injuries. She's quite fortunate to be alive after kidnapping my pregnant wife. She didn't kidnap me. She saved me from you. Elon's smile didn't reach his eyes. The doctors warned me you might be confused. The trauma, the emotional stress of your episode. Sophie struggled to sit up. You tried to kill our baby on the yacht. You had the doctor drug me. Sophie, Elon said gently, taking her hand despite her attempt to pull away. You've been unwell for months. Paranoid delusions, mood swings. Dr. Hendricks has been monitoring your condition. Dr. Hendricks, I've never met a Dr. Hendricks. Your psychiatrist for the past 6 months. Elon produced a file with Sophie's name on it, complete with session notes and prescription records. You don't remember because you've been repressing these episodes. Sophie stared at the file in disbelief. These are forgeries. I've never been treated for any psychiatric condition. Your condition worsened when you became pregnant. The hormonal changes accelerated your paranoia. Elon's voice was reasonable, concerned the perfect performance for the nurse who entered to check Sophie's vitals. The doctors believe you'll stabilize after the birth. The nurse smiled sympathetically at Sophie before leaving. This was Elon's game, creating a narrative of mental instability that would give him complete control. Where am I? Sophie asked, trying to stay calm. Mount Sinai, the best prenatal care in New York. Elon brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch making her skin crawl. You'll stay here until the doctors clear you. Then we'll go home. And if I refuse, you're not in a position to refuse. Sophie. Elon's voice hardened slightly. You've been committed under psychiatric observation for your safety and the baby's. Horror washed over her. Committed. She was legally trapped. What about Jack? What did you do to him? Jack Bennett is recovering well from his unfortunate accident. Elon stood, straightening his jacket. A tragic brake failure. These European rental cars can be so unreliable. You tried to kill him. I visited him yesterday. Actually, offered to cover all his medical expenses. Elon's smile was predatory. He seemed quite grateful. Even agreed to drop his investigation into my business practices. Sophie felt sick. Jack would never agree to that willingly. Unless... What did you threaten him with? Threaten? I merely pointed out that continuing his vendetta against me while recovering from such serious injuries would be unwise. Elon moved toward the door. Rest now. Charles will visit tomorrow with some paperwork for you to sign. I won't sign anything. You will if you want to see your sister again. Sophie froze. What have you done to Megan? Nothing yet. She's under guard in another wing, recovering from a concussion. Elon paused at the doorway. Did you know she's been investigating me for 2 years, quite dedicated to her mission of saving you? If you hurt her, that depends entirely on you. Sophie. Elon's voice was chillingly calm. Sign the papers Charles brings tomorrow, and both you and Megan will be well cared for. Refuse and... He shrugged. Accidents happen. Even in hospitals. After he left, Sophie tried to get out of bed, but her legs were weak, her head spinning. Whatever medications they had her on were keeping her docile. She pressed the call button repeatedly until a nurse appeared. I need to make a phone call, Sophie insisted. It's my right as a patient. I'm sorry, Mrs. Richards, but Dr. Campbell left strict instructions. No phone calls without supervision. The nurse adjusted Sophie's IV. Your husband mentioned you might be agitated. I can give you something to help you rest. No, Sophie pulled away from the nurse. I don't need medication. I need a lawyer. Perhaps tomorrow, when you're feeling better. The nurse's smile was professionally sympathetic as she added something to Sophie's IV. This will help you sleep. Sophie felt the drugs taking effect almost immediately, her thoughts becoming foggy. As consciousness slipped away, one thought remained clear: Elon had won. He had created the perfect trap, using her own sister as leverage. Unless... The next day, Charles Wilson arrived as promised. Legal documents in hand. Sophie, now more alert after refusing morning medications, studied him carefully. The lawyer looked tired, strained, not his usual impeccable self. Elon sends his regrets, Charles said, placing the documents on the bedside table. An emergency board meeting required his attention. What are these? Sophie asked, not touching the papers. Standard agreements, a revised will, healthcare proxy, temporary transfer of your voting shares during your recovery. Charles wouldn't meet her eyes. Sign them, and this all gets easier. Easier for whom, Elon, you? Sophie leaned forward. Tell me, Charles, does it bother you at all, helping him destroy women's lives? First Catherine Stone, now me. Charles stiffened. I'm simply doing my job. Your job included covering up Catherine's murder. Will it include mine too? No one is going to harm you. Sophie, Elon wants you healthy and well, until the baby is born. Sophie watched his reaction carefully. Then I become expendable, just like Catherine. A flicker of discomfort crossed Charles's face. That's not... He killed her, didn't he, when she threatened to expose him, and Victoria knows her own sister, yet she still works with him. Why? What does Elon have on her? Charles gathered the papers, his movements jerky. You need to rest. We can discuss this when you're thinking more clearly. I found your files. Charles. It was a bluff, but Sophie kept her expression confident. The ones you keep as insurance. I know everything. Charles went still. What files? The records of what really happened to Catherine. The evidence you've been gathering against Elon all these years. Sophie held his gaze. Did you think I wouldn't find your secret safe at the office? The one behind the Degas painting. There was no safe behind the painting, as far as Sophie knew. But Charles's reaction told her she'd hit close to a truth. You're bluffing, he said, but uncertainty tinged his voice. Am I? Then why did you keep surveillance photos of me and Megan? Why document Elon's plan to induce my miscarriage on the yacht? Charles sat heavily in the visitor's chair, suddenly looking every one of his 60 years. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Then help me understand, before he kills me too. A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Charles spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Catherine found out Elon had married her for her family's tech patents. When she confronted him, threatened to go public, Charles swallowed. It wasn't supposed to be fatal, just enough to cause a miscarriage, eliminate the heir that would complicate the divorce. But something went wrong, Sophie prompted. Charles nodded. She fell badly, died instantly. He looked up, his eyes haunted. Elon called me to fix it, make it look like an accident, then a suicide driven by postpartum depression. And Victoria, her own sister, Victoria blames herself. She introduced Catherine to Elon, encouraged the relationship. Charles ran a hand over his face. Elon offered her a choice, join him and share in the wealth of Stone Richards Technologies, or face charges for insider trading, which he had fabricated evidence for. So she chose power over justice for her sister, Sophie said bitterly. She chose survival. Charles stood abruptly. I've said too much already. Help me, Charles, Sophie pleaded. Help Megan. You know what Elon is capable of. I can't protect you, Charles said, moving toward the door. No one can. Then give me the means to protect myself, Sophie insisted. Proof of what he did to Catherine. Enough to keep him at bay until I can get somewhere safe. Charles hesitated, conflict clear on his face. Even if such evidence existed, getting it to you now would be impossible. You're under constant surveillance, Sophie thought quickly. The nurse who brings my dinner, Anna. She's not one of Elon's people. She's kind. If you gave something to her, this conversation never happened, Charles said firmly. But Sophie saw the slight nod before he left. Alone again. Sophie assessed her situation. The hospital room was comfortable but secure, no phone, limited visitor access, and medication that kept her weakened. Through the window, she could see the Manhattan skyline, tantalizingly close yet unreachable. Her escape would require perfect timing, outside help, and a miracle. But first, she needed to find Megan. That night, when Nurse Anna brought dinner, Sophie found a small USB drive hidden beneath her napkin. No words were exchanged, but the nurse's meaningful glance confirmed Charles had made his choice. Now she just needed a computer. 3 days passed with Sophie playing the role of compliant patient, She took her medications, hiding them under her tongue, spoke calmly during psychiatric evaluations, and signed some of the less consequential papers Charles brought. All the while, she observed routines, memorized staff rotations, and built rapport with Anna. On the fourth day, Sophie asked Anna for a magazine to read. What she received was a tablet hospital property for patients to access approved entertainment. It wasn't connected to the internet, but it had a USB port for transferring approved content. That night, after ensuring she was alone, Sophie plugged in Charles's drive. The tablet recognized it immediately. What she found exceeded her wildest hopes. Video footage from Elon's lake house security system showing Catherine's fatal fall with Elon clearly pushing her. Email exchanges between Elon and Charles discussing how to handle Catherine's accusations. Financial records showing the systematic transfer of Catherine's assets before and after her death. Most damning of all, a recorded conversation between Elon and Victoria after Catherine's death, explicitly discussing their arrangement, her silence for a share in the merged company. Sophie copied the most crucial files to the tablet itself, then hid the USB drive in a small tear she made in her mattress. Evidence secured. She turned to the problem of escape. The answer came the next morning when Anna whispered during vitals check, "Your sister is being moved tomorrow. Private care facility upstate." Megan was being taken away isolated where Sophie couldn't reach her. The window for action was closing. "I need your help," Sophie whispered back. "Please." Anna hesitated, then slipped a key card into Sophie's hand. "Service elevator, midnight, third floor west wing, room 312. That's where they're keeping her." "Why are you helping us?" Anna's eyes hardened. "My cousin worked for Catherine Stone. I know what happened to her." That night, Sophie prepared carefully. She dressed in the street clothes Anna had smuggled in, hiding them under her hospital gown. She palmed the tablet with the evidence, securing it in a makeshift pouch against her lower back. At 11:55 p.m., Sophie eased her door open. The night nurse was on break, as Anna had promised. Moving quietly despite her pregnancy, Sophie made her way to the service elevator. The third floor was quieter than hers, with fewer staff. Room 312 had a guard posted outside one of Elon's security team. Sophie ducked into a supply closet, weighing her options. The fire alarm on the wall gave her an idea. A distraction was needed. Sophie pulled the alarm. Immediately, sirens wailed throughout the floor. The guard looked around in confusion, then spoke into his radio. After a moment's hesitation, he moved toward the nurse's station, leaving the door momentarily unguarded. Sophie slipped into room 312. Megan lay in bed, looking pale but alert. Her eyes widened at the sight of Sophie. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. "They'll catch you. They're moving you tomorrow. It's now or never." Sophie helped Megan sit up. "Can you walk?" "I think so." Megan winced as she stood. "Broken ribs. Concussion. Nothing that will slow me down too much." Together, they made their way back to the service elevator, taking advantage of the confusion from the fire alarm. Staff were focused on patient evacuation protocols, not watching for escapees. The elevator took them to the basement loading dock, where hospital supplies were delivered. A service door led to an alley behind the building. "Anna said a car would be waiting," Sophie explained as they hurried through the darkness. Sure enough, a nondescript sedan idled at the end of the alley. But as they approached, Sophie froze. The driver was Victoria Stone. "Get in," Victoria ordered, her expression unreadable. "Now, before security realizes you're gone." Megan stepped protectively in front of Sophie. "Why would we trust you?" "Because Charles called me, told me everything." Victoria's voice cracked slightly. "About Catherine. About what Elon plans for Sophie after the birth." "You've known all along what he did to your sister," Sophie accused. "I suspected. Never had proof." Victoria's eyes flashed with anger and grief. "Until now. Charles gave you the files too." Sophie realized. Victoria nodded. "Get in. We don't have much time." It could still be a trap, but with hospital security undoubtedly searching for them already, options were limited. "Where are you taking us?" Megan demanded as they reluctantly got into the car. "Somewhere Elon won't look." Victoria pulled away from the curb, driving carefully to avoid attention. "My family's old house in Connecticut. It's been empty since my parents died." Sophie exchanged a glance with Megan. Neither fully trusted Victoria, but for now they had no choice. As they drove through the night, leaving Manhattan behind, Sophie felt the baby kick vigorously. Despite everything, she smiled. They were still fighting, still alive. And now, finally, they had the evidence to bring Elon down. The Stone family estate sat on 10 secluded acres in Greenwich, Connecticut. The colonial mansion had seen better days, but it offered what they needed most: privacy and security. For 3 days, Sophie, Megan, and Victoria worked to compile the evidence against Elon. Victoria provided access to Stone Technologies' servers, revealing the company's role in covering up Catherine's death. Megan contributed her 2 years of research, including testimonies from other women Elon had silenced over the years. Sophie, drawing on her legal background, organized it all into a damning case file. "It's still not enough," Victoria said on the third night, as they reviewed their work. "Elon's legal team will tear this apart, claim the videos were doctored, the emails fabricated." "We need a confession," Megan agreed. "Something irrefutable." Sophie stared out the window at the gathering storm clouds. "He needs to think he's won, that I'm desperate and alone." "What are you suggesting?" Victoria asked. "I'll contact him. Tell him I've escaped from the hospital, that Megan abandoned me." Sophie turned to face them. "I'll say I'm scared, that I'll sign whatever he wants if he'll just take me back." "He'll never believe that," Megan objected. "He will if we give him a reason to." Sophie's hand went to her stomach. "I'll tell him I'm having complications with the pregnancy, that I need his help." "It's too dangerous," Victoria said. "He nearly killed you on that yacht." "I'll meet him somewhere public first, the penthouse at 157. Sophie's expression hardened. "Where we have control of the environment." "The penthouse is his territory," Megan pointed out. "Not anymore." Sophie smiled grimly. "I had it rewired 6 months ago. Every room has hidden cameras and microphones that Elon knows nothing about. A security measure I took when I first became suspicious." Victoria looked impressed. "You've been preparing for this longer than we realized." "I'm a lawyer. I believe in evidence." Sophie laid out her plan. "We record his confession, then take everything to the FBI. The financial crimes alone will put him away for decades." The plan was set in motion. Sophie called Elon from a burner phone, her voice carefully modulated to sound frightened and desperate. "Elon, please help me. Something's wrong with the baby. I think I'm losing it." His response was immediate, concerned the perfect husband. "Sophie, thank God. Where are you? I'll send a car." "I'm at the apartment. I didn't know where else to go." "Stay there. I'm in a meeting uptown. I'll be there in 30 minutes. His voice softened. "Everything will be all right. Sophie, I promise." The trap was set. Sophie, Megan, and Victoria prepared the penthouse, ensuring all recording devices were operational. Megan and Victoria would hide in the master bedroom, ready to intervene if necessary. 28 minutes after the call, the private elevator announced Elon's arrival. Sophie positioned herself in the living room, looking appropriately disheveled and distressed. Elon stepped into the apartment, immaculate in a charcoal suit. His expression showed genuine concern. He was already in character. "Sophie." He moved toward her, arms outstretched. "I've been so worried." She allowed him to embrace her, fighting the revulsion that threatened to overwhelm her. "I'm sorry, Elon, I was confused. Scared." "Shh, it's all right now." He guided her to the sofa. "Tell me about the baby. Have you seen a doctor?" "No, I was afraid they'd report me to the hospital." Sophie placed a protective hand on her belly. "The pain started yesterday." Elon's hand joined hers on her stomach, and it took all Sophie's willpower not to pull away. "We should get you checked. My private physician can be discreet." I just want to come home, Sophie said, injecting a pleading note into her voice. I'll sign the papers. Whatever you want. I just need to know my baby will be safe. Something flickered in Elon's eyes' triumph. Perhaps. Of course the baby will be safe. That's all I've ever wanted. Even on the yacht, Sophie ventured cautiously. With the doctor, Elon's expression didn't change, but his hand tensed on her stomach. I don't know what you mean. I heard you, Elon, you and the doctor, discussing how to induce a miscarriage. Sophie made her voice quaver. Why would you want to hurt our baby? Sophie, Elon said carefully. You were having delusions. Paranoia. Remember what Dr. Hendricks said? There is no Dr. Hendricks. Sophie pulled away from him. You created him, created all those medical records to make me look unstable. Elon's mask of concern slipped, replaced by cold calculation. I see Megan has filled your head with these conspiracy theories. Megan saved my life, and our babies. Sophie stood, putting distance between them. Just like she tried to save Catherine Stone. The name hit like a thunderbolt. Elon went completely still. What do you know about Catherine? Everything. How you married her for her family's tech patents. How you pushed her down those stairs when she threatened to expose you. Sophie watched him carefully. Just like you planned to do to me after the birth. Elon rose slowly, his movements controlled. These are serious accusations. Sophie, the kind that could damage both of us if made public. I have proof. Elon, the security footage from the lake house, your emails with Charles, everything. For a moment, genuine surprise crossed his face. Then he laughed a cold, humorless sound. Charles, I should have known he'd keep insurance. It's over, Sophie said firmly. The FBI will have everything by morning. Elon moved toward her, his previous gentleness gone. You think it's that simple that you can threaten me and walk away? He grabbed her arm roughly. You forget who I am, what I'm capable of. Let go of me, Sophie demanded, real fear mixing with her pretense now. You're not going anywhere, Elon growled. Not until we resolve this. One way or another. Like you resolved things with Catherine, Sophie challenged, needing him to say it. Catherine was weak, emotional. She would have ruined everything we built. Elon's grip tightened painfully. Yes, I pushed her. I didn't mean for her to die, but she left me no choice, just like you're leaving me no choice now. There it was, the confession. Sophie prayed the cameras had captured it clearly. What about our baby? She asked, playing for time. Your heir. My son will have everything he deserves, Elon said coldly. But he doesn't need a mentally unstable mother complicating his life. Sophie felt cold dread wash over her. You're going to kill me. No one will question it. Postpartum depression leading to a tragic accident. Elon's voice was eerily calm. Just like Catherine, history repeating itself. You're a monster. I'm a visionary, building a legacy your limited imagination can't comprehend. Elon pulled her closer. The Anderson patents combined with Richard's technology will revolutionize artificial intelligence, create the future. And Megan, what about her? Sophie asked, trying to stall. Where were Megan and Victoria? Your sister was an unexpected complication, but manageable. Elon smiled coldly. Blood is thicker than water, isn't it? That's why she came to your rescue. You knew all along. I suspected when I first saw her. The resemblance is subtle but unmistakable. DNA confirmed it. Elon's eyes glittered. Richard Anderson's secret daughter. The missing piece to complete my collection of Anderson patents. That's all we ever were to you. Patents, assets, business assets. Yes, though you were quite satisfying in other ways. His free hand trailed down her cheek in a mockery of affection. A shame it has to end this way. In one swift movement, Elon shoved Sophie backward. She stumbled, hitting her head against the marble coffee table. Pain exploded through her skull. Through blurred vision, she saw Elon approaching, something in his hand, a glass paperweight from the desk, heavy enough to cause fatal damage. "Goodbye, Sophie," he said, raising his arm. A blur of movement from the doorway, Megan launching herself at Elon. They collided violently, tumbling toward the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Central Park. Sophie struggled to her feet, blood trickling down her face, as Elon and Megan grappled near the glass. Elon was stronger, pinning Megan against the window. "You should have stayed away," he snarled, hands closing around her throat. "I would have made it quick for you otherwise." Victoria appeared from the bedroom, a gun in her hand. "Let her go! Elon!" Elon froze, turning to face this new threat. "Victoria, I should have known you'd betray me too." "You killed my sister," Victoria said, her voice shaking slightly. "Made me an accomplice. We had a deal. You chose power over justice. Remember?" Elon's smile was taunting. "You're not a killer, Victoria. You're a businesswoman. Put the gun down, and we can renegotiate." Sophie saw the hesitation in Victoria's eyes. Saw Elon recognize it too. In that moment of distraction, Megan struck, driving her knee into Elon's back. He staggered forward, off balance. Megan pushed with all her strength. The window held, but the latch didn't. The massive pane swung outward, taking Elon with it. For one surreal moment, he seemed suspended in air, 60 stories above Manhattan. His eyes locked with Sophie's, shock giving way to something like resignation. Then he was gone. The three women stood frozen, staring at the open window. The sounds of the city rose up from below distant sirens, the eternal New York traffic. Victoria lowered the gun slowly. "It's over." Sophie moved to the window, looking down at the small crowd already gathering on the street below. "No," she said quietly. "Now we have to deal with the aftermath." Megan came to stand beside her, taking her hand. Together. Sophie squeezed her sister's hand, feeling the strange new bond between them forged in danger, secured in survival. "There's something you should know," Megan said after a moment. "Something I found in Elon's private files that wasn't in Charles's records." "What?" Sophie asked, suddenly exhausted. "Victoria isn't just Catherine's sister." Megan glanced at Victoria, who stood apart from them, her face ashen. "She's the one who introduced Elon to our father in the first place. She's been part of this from the beginning." Sophie turned to Victoria in shock. "Is that true?" Victoria didn't deny it. "I never wanted anyone to die. Catherine, your father. It wasn't supposed to happen that way." "My father died of a heart attack," Sophie said, her voice hollow. "Are you saying Elon was responsible for that too?" Victoria couldn't meet her eyes. "Your father discovered what Elon was really planning with his AI technology, military applications, surveillance systems, things Richard had explicitly forbidden in his patents. So Elon had him killed," Megan finished, her voice tight with anger. "It was made to look natural," Victoria admitted. "A small, undetectable compound that triggers cardiac arrest. Elon had acquired it through his pharmaceutical subsidiaries." Sophie felt her knees weaken. Megan guided her to a chair, her touch gentle despite her own obvious shock. "Why are you telling us this now?" Sophie asked Victoria. "Because it's time for the truth. All of it." Victoria looked down at the gun still in her hand. "I've been complicit too long." Before either sister could respond, the penthouse door burst open. Charles Wilson stood there, flanked by two men in suits. "FBI," one of the men announced, showing his badge. "We received an emergency call about a potential homicide." Charles stepped forward, his expression grim. "I made the call, and I've brought them everything, all the evidence against Elon Richards." Sophie looked at him in surprise. "You chose sides." "I chose justice," Charles corrected. "Finally?" As the FBI agents moved through the penthouse, securing the scene and calling for backup, Sophie felt the baby kick vigorously. Despite everything, the horror, the revelations, the trauma, she smiled. We're going to be okay, she whispered, one hand on her belly, the other still holding Megan's. Her sister nodded. We're family. That's what matters now. In the chaos that followed statements given, evidence collected, medical personnel arriving to check on Sophie's injuries, one thing became clear: the Richards empire would fall, but from its ashes, the Anderson sisters would rise. 3 months later, the private hospital room was filled with flowers, sunlight streaming through wide windows overlooking Central Park. Sophie sat propped up in bed, cradling her newborn daughter. She has your eyes, Megan said, perched on the edge of the bed, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. And Dad's chin, Sophie replied with a smile. Elizabeth Richard Anderson, a proper name for a new beginning. Jack Bennett entered, walking with a cane but otherwise recovered from his accident. The press is going crazy downstairs, he reported. The birth of a baby girl to the Anderson sisters, as they're calling you, is big news. Let them wait, Sophie said, not taking her eyes off her daughter. We have more important things to focus on. The door opened again, and Victoria Stone stepped in hesitantly. Though she had cooperated fully with the authorities, providing crucial testimony about Elon's crimes, her relationship with the sisters remained complicated. I wasn't sure I should come, she said, lingering by the door. You helped bring Elon to justice, Megan acknowledged. Late, but you did it. And you're paying for your part, Sophie added, referring to the plea deal Victoria had accepted immunity from prosecution in exchange for dismantling the corrupt aspects of Stone Technologies. Victoria approached the bed cautiously. She's beautiful. Would you like to hold her? Sophie offered, surprising everyone, including herself. As Victoria carefully took the baby, tears in her eyes, Sophie and Megan exchanged a glance. Forgiveness might be possible someday, though not yet. For now, this small gesture was enough. Jack cleared his throat. The Anderson Foundation's first board meeting is scheduled for next week. The patents have all been transferred back to your joint ownership. And Charles, Sophie asked, cooperating fully, his testimony has already put 3 of Elon's executives behind bars. Jack smiled wryly. He's hoping for leniency, but he'll still serve time. Sophie looked around the room at her sister, her daughter, even Victoria, and felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. We have a lot of work ahead, she said. Rebuilding what Elon tried to destroy. Using Dad's technology the way he intended to help people, not control them. Megan squeezed her hand. Together. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the hospital room, Sophie thought about the journey that had brought them here. The betrayals, the discoveries, the fight for survival, and now, new life, new beginnings. Outside, a photographer captured the moment from a distance, the Anderson sisters with baby Elizabeth, framed in golden light. The photo would appear in magazines worldwide, alongside headlines about the fall of tech billionaire Elon Richards and the rise of the Anderson Foundation. What the photos wouldn't show was the document on Sophie's bedside table, a DNA test confirming what Victoria had finally revealed. There was a third Anderson sister, living quietly in Europe, unaware of her connection to the family. Another secret, another chapter waiting to be written. The baby yawned, tiny fingers curling around Sophie's thumb. For now, this was enough. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but they would face them as they had faced Elon, with courage, determination, and the unbreakable bond of family.